This video for the Vital Syllabus looks at the concept of the Transhumanist Shadow. The shadow is something that obscures the important core messages of transhumanism, messages about a potential impending transition of humanity, H, into a radically enhanced condition, H+, a condition in which humanity transcends many of our ages-old limitations and enters into what can be called a 5S civilization of super longevity, super intelligence, super happiness, super democracy, and sustainable super abundance. Unfortunately, these messages are sometimes obscured by a cloud of distractions, namely the transhumanist shadow. The transhumanist shadow is one of 4 factors that explain why transhumanism, despite its many profound insights and key recommendations, presently has only limited support from the public at large. The first of these factors is that the ideas of transhumanism have received comparatively little publicity or attention. Many members of the public, if asked to describe transhumanism, would be able to offer only a simple answer at best. This shortcoming can be addressed by better education, as in this Vital Syllabus project. The second factor is that transhumanism sometimes seems just like a set of theoretical ideas, as a lot of wishful thinking without having a corresponding set of recommended practical actions to accelerate and safeguard the arrival of the 5S civilization. In other words, what people sometimes hear about is bystander transhumanism rather than active transhumanism. This shortcoming can be addressed by highlighting useful transhumanist projects happening here and now. The third factor is a set of unfair and confused criticisms of transhumanism. Criticisms often spread by people who, for various reasons, have ideological axes to grind, or who are being driven by some inner psychological demons. These criticisms involve concepts such as eugenics, totalitarianism, scientism, technocracy, utopianism, hubris, utilitarianism, data centrism, ableism, over-attachment, religion in disguise, and so on. These criticisms deserve to be analysed carefully. See other Vital Syllabus videos for such analysis, which highlight the ways in which active transhumanism emerges stronger, clearer, and even more relevant to today's issues in the light of these criticisms. That brings us to the fourth factor why transhumanism presently has only limited public support, the transhumanist shadow. Whereas the set of criticisms just mentioned are generally unfair and confused and can be dispelled by better advocacy and better education, the transhumanist shadow gives observers more compelling reasons to be fearful or skeptical about transhumanism. This shadow can be described as an unhelpful dark side of part of the extended community that surrounds transhumanism. In order for transhumanism to gain wider understanding and support, it is necessary to shed more light into this shadow, to dispel it, and to inspire members of the extended transhumanist community to act in better alignment with the full set of values of active transhumanism. Otherwise, observers will fixate on what they perceive, with some justification, as dangerous and selfish elements of the transhumanist community, and these observers will, unfortunately, turn their backs on the entire philosophy as a result. The various elements of the transhumanist shadow each arise from deprioritizing one or more of the core values of active transhumanism. Recall these core transhumanist values: attention to the radical opportunity of a profoundly better future within our grasp, coupled with close awareness of the existential dangers that could arise from misuse of new and existing technologies, highlighting the pivotal importance of human agency, wise human thinking, and concerted human action, recognizing that there are no easy answers, and that inattention, distraction, incomprehension, or intimidation are likely to lead us to a very bad outcome. Championing an all-round appreciation and improvement of human well-being, in which individual human well-being is paramount. Individual human well-being should never be sacrificed or subordinated in favor of collectivist goals, but also accepting our mutual responsibilities to each other, in which we are stronger together rather than fragmented. Promoting science, data, and rationality, along with a deep openness to new insights and proactive vigilance against unexpected developments, and extending the previous ideas to the spheres of sustainability, the well-being of consciousness in all its forms, and the cherishing and nurturing of diversity of opinions and lifestyles within the broad transhumanist framework, since it's from interactions between diverse subcultures that many of the most important insights and experiences are likely to arise. Transhumanists, or their supporters, or fellow travelers who place little emphasis on the risks of existential danger, give rise to the risk complacency aspect of the transhumanist shadow. Those who deny the importance of human agency give rise to the technological determinism aspect of the shadow. Those who have a narrow view of human well-being, in particular those who identify human value largely in terms of intelligence or thinking, can give rise to the loathing of biology aspect of the shadow. Those who turn their back on mutual responsibility give rise to the egocentric transhumanism aspect of the shadow. Those who give only lip service to the values of science, data, and rationality give rise to the solution hyping aspect of the transhumanist shadow. Those who fail to practice openness and to close their minds in favor of particular cherished products give rise to the solution dogmatism aspect of the shadow. Those who are unwilling to be proactively vigilant regarding possible adverse side effects of new technologies or new policies can give rise to the anti-regulation fundamentalism aspect of the shadow. Finally, those who disdain diversity or who give it only lip service can give rise to the monoculture transhumanism aspect of the transhumanist shadow. Let's now look more closely at each of these shadow aspects and how to address the damage they are causing. Let's start with technological determinism. This is sometimes expressed in a picture on social media with the headline, "Victory of transhumanism is inevitable," or similar. In this line of thinking, technological development will control what happens in the future, more or less regardless of the actions of individual humans. This view sees bigger forces of history at play, dictating outcomes, ensuring the ultimate transcendence of humanity. Transhumanists are therefore reduced to cheering from the sidelines. This cheerleading sees itself as potentially speeding matters up slightly, but not as changing any overall direction of history. This mindset has some similarities with Marxist determinism, which foresaw, as supposedly inevitable, the rise of the working class and the overthrow of capitalism. There are similarities too with religious visions of forthcoming messianic interventions and apocalyptic vindication for the faithful. Now, it may be psychologically appealing to deny the relevance of human action and to indulge in wishful rah-rah thinking regarding the smooth arrival of a 5S civilization. It's understandable that people who arrive in the transhumanist community with battered psyches on account of their personal histories may be attracted to that kind of vision. But any such hands-off mentality makes it more likely that the trajectory of technological development will lead us to a dreadful landmine encounter. That mentality is irresponsible. It leaves people enfeebled and disempowered, rather than as participants who are actively harnessing and steering the development of technology. Technological determinism has little resemblance to what has actually happened in history. Progress has been much more complicated than any simple one-dimensional exponential graph would imply. A richer study of history, such as is contained in various Vital Syllabus presentations, shows not only that progress often suffers reversals, but that coordinated human action can make the key difference. Technology by itself by no means determines the outcome. Instead, people who are inspired by a credible, engaging vision and who become involved in transformational projects can play a decisive role. Accordingly, the only way to navigate through the treacherous landmines ahead is to remain vigilant and active. Cheerleading can be helpful, but is by no means all that is needed. Instead of technological determinism, active transhumanism highlights human determinism. To be clear, active transhumanism often includes predictions about the future, but these are rarely definite predictions about specific actions assuredly taking place at specific dates. Instead, they are predictions about probable outcomes or possible outcomes. Active transhumanism also involves statements about which future outcomes would be desirable and which undesirable. But uncertainty is a core aspect of transhumanist predictions. Uncertainty is inevitable, first regarding the precise pace at which key technological breakthroughs are made, that is, when new products and services will become available. Uncertainty is also inevitable about the full set of uses to be made of these innovative new products and services. This uncertainty is no reason for despair or for defeatism. Instead, it's a reason for action, to be ready to adapt swiftly to new developments. The shadow characteristic of solution dogmatism moves from unwarranted certainty about outcomes to unwarranted certainty about the steps required to achieve these outcomes. This unwarranted certainty comes in many different flavors. One example is genetic determinism, the view that the most important changes in our biology will necessarily result from altering our genes. An example from another extreme is anti-capitalism fundamentalism, the view that progress towards transhumanist goals will be held up until the capitalist system is somehow overthrown. Yet another example is anti-money fundamentalism, which insists that the first thing that needs to be done is to abolish money, or perhaps to abolish the ability of banks to issue new fiat money. Now, whilst there's definitely room to evaluate some interventions as more significant and more urgent than others, it's important to keep an open mind. Dogmatism and fundamentalism shutter perceptions and make it more likely that technological development will go off the rails in unexpected ways. Thus, whilst genes clearly do influence biological well-being, they're by no means the only factor in play. To improve human well-being, interventions at many other levels of biology should be considered too, alongside interventions at social, political, or mindset levels. It's the same with the pros and cons of capitalist economics and with the operation of banks and currencies. In all these cases, having closed minds could cause us to miss the best opportunity to achieve the future we desire. Instead of solution dogmatism, we need to uphold solution openness. A third area of the transhumanist shadow is anti-regulation fundamentalism, which is a special case of solution dogmatism. The idea here is that all regulation of the economy should be resisted. In this view, entrepreneurs and engineers should be allowed a free rein to make progress as fast as they would like. This view arises from a dual assessment of competencies. Entrepreneurs and engineers are assessed as being the great heroes of societal progress, creating and applying new technologies. Politicians and regulators are assessed, in contrast, as being the villains of this story, hindering progress for their own short-sighted reasons, such as preserving a status quo from which they benefit. But in both cases, that's a very narrow reading of history. A fuller assessment shows that some public health initiatives, driven by visionary politicians at national or local levels, have actually saved millions of lives. Products introduced by entrepreneurs and engineers often have significant safety issues, especially when quality has been sacrificed or when users have been deliberately misled. Hence, there's a positive role for regulators to curtail misleading marketing. Powerful companies, if left to their own trajectory, often eliminate competitors and therefore move from an earlier mode, when they frequently introduced innovations, into a later, more static mode that restricts innovations and disruptions. Hence, again, there's a positive role for regulators, this time to ensure market competitiveness. The most effective way to solve various problems isn't always by applying new technology. Instead, political changes can sometimes prove much more applicable. In other words, there are two problems with anti-regulation fundamentalism. First, it falls victim to techno-solutionism, always expecting technical fixes, whereas non-technical changes are sometimes a better solution. Second, even when a technological change would be the best solution, sometimes the most effective way to ensure such solution is developed is via positive political direction of the economy, via industrial strategy. In summary, active transhumanism aims to elevate the operating methods of entrepreneurs and engineers and the operating methods of politicians and regulators. To be clear, this does not mean simply advocating more politics or more regulation. Instead, what is advocated is better politics and better regulation. These are two aspects of what is meant in practice by the transhumanist value of proactive vigilance. The next area of the transhumanist shadow takes an overly rosy attitude toward entrepreneurs one step further. This problem, solution hyping, is when unwarranted marketing claims are tolerated or even promoted. The issue arises when people seek to make money from particular products without any reliable evidence of the efficacy and safety of what they are selling. Examples include various pills or potions supposed to help extend lifespan, increase intelligence, sharpen concentration, or strengthen emotional bonds. To be clear, various pills and other treatments can deliver these kinds of results as claimed, and they often do have a good evidence base. These products are not the problem, nor is there a problem when a treatment is made available even though the experimental evidence for it remains unclear, so long as the people who choose to take part in a trial of it are fully aware of the product's uncertain status. The problem instead is with rogue products, and when some transhumanists fail to demand appropriate levels of rigor and evidence before endorsing a product. In some cases, the overselling is deliberate. The people involved understand that they are overstating their claims, but they proceed regardless. In other cases, the overselling arises from naivety and lack of sufficient knowledge by the vendors and their supporters. In all cases, various sorts of damage can arise to people who purchase the goods or services and suffer actual health problems as a result, to people who squander lots of money on ineffectual goods or services, and to the reputation of the transhumanist community as a whole for apparently tolerating or even praising the products involved or the people who were pushing them. Incidentally, it's possible to question the underlying motivation of some of the people in this area of the transhumanist shadow. They may only be simulating an enthusiasm for transhumanism on account of courting a potential market for the products and services they hope to sell. In other words, part of the damage to the reputation of transhumanism is being caused by people who were just feigning support. Part of the damage is also due to things said or done by people who make no claims to being transhumanist, but who are nonetheless associated with the movement by careless or excitable reporters. But to be clear, part of the damage also arises from people who honestly see themselves as good representatives of the philosophy, but whose scientific judgment is poor. In all cases, the solution to avoiding solution hyping is to uphold the active transhumanist value of science, data, and rationality. This takes us to our fifth area of the transhumanist shadow, egocentric transhumanism, namely a lack of concern for unequal access to the fruits of technology. In this case, a technology enthusiast celebrates his or her own opportunities for better health and better intelligence, etc., but shows little practical concern regarding whether others can also share these benefits. When explicitly asked, the technology enthusiast might agree that others should be able to benefit too, but this possibility seems to be far from their mind most of the time. This lack of concern may be accompanied by what might be called a trickle-down theory of transhumanism, the belief that once technological benefits are available for a vanguard set of early adopters, they will in due course automatically become available to everyone who is sufficiently interested in them. Now, the transhumanist concept of a superabundance of goods and services does assert that there will in due course be sufficient for everyone to enjoy a superbly high quality of life. That's in due course. However, different considerations apply in the turbulent transitional period leading to the achievement of that superabundance. During the extreme stress and turmoil of the next decades, if members of the general public perceive that they are falling behind from the wave of benefits that a few people are apparently receiving, people who seem perhaps to be more grasping and self-seeking, the resulting anguish and hostility will magnify the challenges in steering humanity away from major destructive landmines. Instead of that kind of disinterest in each other's well-being, active transhumanism emphasizes mutual responsibility. The suggestion cannot be of any kind of transhumanism for the 1%. It should be on transhumanism for all. Everyone is invited, everyone is welcome, and everyone should be supported as they wish along their own particular journeys. Related to egocentric transhumanism is monoculture transhumanism, a sixth area of the transhumanist shadow, in which individual technology enthusiasts show concerns for other people who are sufficiently similar to themselves, but they are disinterested or even antagonistic to other potential supporters of transhumanist principles who have different backgrounds, different primary or secondary aspirations, or different ways of expressing themselves. So long as any one transhumanist monoculture dominates, the movement is weaker because it fails to take advantage of the varied insights, experience, connections, and talents from more diverse sources. Moreover, the growth of the movement is stymied because of alienating and deterring potential new supporters with different backgrounds and desires. Accordingly, the principle of transhumanist diversity should be upheld. A seventh area of transhumanist shadow is loathing of biology. These technology enthusiasts find aspects of their biological existence so distasteful or limiting, that they concentrate on ideas for transferring their minds as soon as possible out of biology into alternative hardware substrates, such as a cloud of silicon computers. These transhumanists show less interest in options to repair and augment their existing physical bodies, and they speak contemptuously about their bodies as being meat sacks. Although that view represents, in reality, only a small minority of the overall transhumanist community, it has been selected by some researchers as somehow providing the core definition of transhumanism. In this view, transhumanism is all about uploading minds to the cloud. Thus, in the 2019 BBC and HBO series, Years and Years, one teenage character, Bethany, comes out to her parents as being trans, meaning transhumanist. What shocks Bethany's parents most is her expressed desire to live forever as information. In contrast, active transhumanism emphasizes the full diversity of aspects of human flourishing. Not just intelligence and rich data, but also, for example, vitality, liberty, creativity, health, awareness, happiness, collaboration, and bliss. That brings us to perhaps the deepest part of the transhumanist shadow, risk complacency. This is a focus on the potential large upsides of new technologies, whilst giving only lip service to their potential large downsides. The technology enthusiasts in question often point out that previous forecasts of existential disaster, from famines, runaway climate change, nanotechnology grey goo, global pandemics, and so on, have not yet been fulfilled. Therefore, they say there's no need to worry. But that's very short-sighted. It's like saying that super longevity or super intelligence have not arrived yet, so they never will. In both cases, the downsides and the upsides, it's potentially just a matter of time. Instead of certainties, we need to embrace probabilities. And instead of linear thinking, we need to embrace exponential thinking. That is, we should be ready for exponential change, slow followed by fast, which is potentially exponentially accelerating downsides as well as potentially accelerating upsides. The technology enthusiasts in question generally accept intellectually that new technologies do bring some risks, but they tend to express an easy confidence that these risks will be relatively straightforward to manage. Accordingly, they wish to minimize how much attention is given to any potential dangers. Such attention, they argue, might cause resources to be turned away from innovative technologies, delaying potential important breakthroughs. It might encourage politicians and regulators to develop an interest in these technologies and likely impose foolish restrictions with little true understanding of the consequences of their meddling. And it might raise unhelpful calls for global cooperation in the face of potential global risks, making it more likely that problems with bureaucratic or self-serving restrictions will pass from a national level, where they already pose problems, up to an international level, where they would have an effect that is even more stultifying. These concerns have some merit, but taken too far, they become dangerous. We need an approach that upholds and values both risk prioritization and risk management. That approach embodies both a precautionary principle and a proactionary principle. The precautionary principle emphasizes the dangers of action in areas of relative ignorance. The proactionary principle emphasizes the dangers of inaction in areas of relative ignorance. The precautionary principle urges learning before action. The proactionary principle urges learning as a result of action. Both principles are needed, not in any naive or extreme form, but in thoughtful, adaptive forms. By the way, for more on the interplay between the precautionary principle and the proactionary principle, see the Vital Syllabus videos on the subject of the singularity principles. And for more on the set of risks humanity is facing and specific approaches to solving them, see the Vital Syllabus videos on the subject of landmines. To recap, the public assessment of transhumanism has been complicated and darkened by too much prominence being given, not to the essential features of the movement or its philosophy, but to aspects of what is an unfortunate transhumanist shadow. The way to reduce the negative impact of this transhumanist shadow is to emphasize and uphold the full set of values of active transhumanism. Active transhumanism emphasizes responsible real-world action. It highlights the pivotal role of human agency in determining whether the upsides or the downsides of new technologies will prevail. It underlines inclusiveness and diversity rather than egocentrism or monoculture. And it sees active politics as being vital to ushering in the profoundly better future in which the destructive limitations of human nature are left far behind. Thank you for your interest in this topic, the Transhumanist Shadow. Look out for other Vital Syllabus videos that provide additional insight about transhumanism.